I'm still not sure how to start these because we've dropped the intro, and I think this is probably the intro right now.
Yeah, well, we've tried many different ways. Just so you guys know, if you've ever started a podcast, don't feel bad if you've gone through multiple iterations of trying things. It's like, I've maybe mentioned this before, when you're doing a podcast, it's kind of like the first season of a TV show.
Right.
Like, go back and watch the first season of like The Office or Lost, if anybody's seen the series of Lost, or Seinfeld. It's interesting, the characters, and I guess Josh and I maybe are some of the characters in this. You evolve. You're
a character.
Yeah, I'm definitely a character. You find like more your personality or who you are, and I think you become more comfortable. In TV, obviously, you're really adjusting to who this character is. On this podcast, it's more of you just become more comfortable.
Yeah.
You become more raw, more real. It's very hard. I don't know if anybody else experiences this listening to the podcast. For me, it's really, really hard. People talk about being authentic. It is really hard to be real, and I give myself the excuse of I'm trying to be nice. And I don't mean it like being real is not being mean to people, but you always kind of give yourself like this excuse of, well, that's not how they would want me to act, or I don't want to offend them, or I don't. And so you constantly kind of mold to the audience, and there's an art form to that in sales. But it really makes it hard for people to really connect with you because you're always becoming a chameleon to them.
Yeah.
Like it's like, I don't know how to explain
it. Well, it's not unique to us. I'm in a podcast group, like a few podcast group on Facebook. And the number one question that most people ask is like, how many episodes are you recording before even releasing your podcast? I mean, people are recording 20 episodes.
Well, we recorded a bunch and then
re-recording the first episode 20 different times, which we did a few times as well, too.
We were embarrassed.
Hey, this is all content. This is all something that we're doing because we want to connect with our audience. We want to build a bigger audience, meet new people, kind of get our thoughts and our experiences out there, and then learn from others. And one of the people that we're going to be learning from today.
Yes, so buckle in because...
Speaking of being authentic, she has a ton of great content on this because her strategy and really her message is really all about social media, how to build that story on social media. Her name is Katie Lance. She is the CEO and co-founder of Katie Lance Consulting and is a nationally known keynote speaker at conferences and events. And I believe, Katie, you worked for Inman at some point, right? And you actually began their ambassador program at Inman like a year or 10 years ago, doing that kind of thing, getting a tribe, getting people that were raving fans of Inman, and then leveraging them to help cover Inman events and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's how a lot of it started. I worked for Inman for a number of years and was really honored to be able to be part of the initiative that helped launch that ambassador program.
And now you're running your own consulting firm and joining us here on Stay Paid today.
Jumped out into the entrepreneur's water.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today. I am excited to be here.
No, it's amazing to have you. And for those who don't know, Inman News is like the leading news site for real estate stuff. So I actually check Inman News every single day because,
every morning.
Our biggest industry we work in, as you guys know, is real estate agents. And so just getting kind of what's happening in the industry. So if you don't know of Inman News, you should. If you're in real estate, you should go check it out. But that's what Josh is referring to. Katie, super excited to have you on. We were just chatting a little bit before we came on the podcast. We've been following you now for I think about like 3 years. I remember we sponsored something at Inman and I was able to speak on stage, and that's when I first learned about you and saw one of your speeches where you kind of broke it down within, I don't know if it was like 5 minutes or the 5 best things in 5 minutes or something like that. And we've kind of been following you. And what's impressed me is, you have what I've called kind of grinded it out. Like there's some people we interview. Yeah, there's some people we interview that they just, for some reason, something clicks and they get viral and one post leads to, and it goes. I haven't necessarily seen that with yours following your social media. It has been a labor of love, if I can say it correctly. You have consistently posted, consistently grinded it out, and now you're over 14,000 followers on Instagram, 14,000, 15,000 on Facebook. I'm probably getting the numbers a little wrong, but you've built this following. You've built this following really being consistent and giving value. And so I'm really interested to learn, obviously, about building that because we're trying to build ours for our company. And I know our audience is hearing 24/7. You should be on social if you're not on social. You should post this many times a day.
Gotta post your stories.
Right?
You gotta post your lives.
I myself, and guys, listen to this. You'll have camaraderie with this. I mean, we run a multi-million-dollar organization here. We are a marketing company. And we still are in meetings, testing, trying things, still trying to figure out the beast of social media, trying to figure out, because it's constantly changing. There's so many platforms. So if you feel some fear with social media, grab a pen, grab a notepad, listen back to this podcast, because Katie, this is what she loves. She's a practitioner in her own business, so she practices what she preaches, and then she's a coach and she teaches real estate agents and maybe many more, I don't know, we'll find out, but about how to use social media. And I really want to pick her brain today on what are the best tips? What are the very best, if you could give your best 2, 3, whatever it is, tips, what would you give? But before we do that, I want Katie to kind of introduce herself to all of you. I like asking the person to kind of give your story. Katie, give us your 30,000 foot view of this journey called life that you've been on. And, walk us through, how did you get to running this Social Smart Academy that you're doing in this Katie Lance Consulting? Walk us through your journey.
Absolutely. I don't know if I can follow that intro though. That was pretty awesome. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And thank you for the compliment about just grinding it out. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that today, because I'm a big believer in content and consistency and all that good stuff. So, just to share, I just as you mentioned, kind of a quick background about me. I've always loved marketing. I was always one of those people who just kind of always loved the idea of marketing. Went to school for that back in the day. I don't want to date myself, but I certainly did not go to school for social media, because it didn't really exist back when I was in college. And I got into the real estate industry about a decade or so ago. I was hired to be a marketing director for a local boutique brokerage here in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live. And that was my first step into real estate. And I was the gal who at the boutique brokerage was doing all the marketing. I was doing the flyers and the newspaper ads. And that was kind of when social media was starting to really come to the forefront, especially with real estate. And at the risk of sounding corny, I really fell in love with the industry. I really love the entrepreneurial spirit of agents and brokers, and worked at that brokerage for a number of years. And then from there went on to work for Inman News, as you mentioned, for a number of years. I started as their marketing director, and I worked my way up the ladder, became their social media director, helped launch their ambassador program. And then I got the opportunity to speak all over the country. And that's really where I kind of fell in love with, speaking and helping and really kind of being a servant in a lot of ways to serving the industry. And then, as you mentioned, I got that entrepreneurial bug. So in 2012, I got that, kind of entrepreneurial bug and decided to go out on my own. And so it'll be 7 years this October that we've been in business.
Congratulations.
A few years ago, my husband quit his corporate job, so he's my
you're really all committed now.
Partner in business, yeah. So we're all in, and we've grown and
that's amazing.
Formed over the years. So it's exciting to be here and see what happens next.
I'm curious, what was the hardest part about starting your business? Because I know people who are listening to this maybe just started their business. What was the hardest part for you?
I would probably say, I guess, two things. The first was actually just making the decision to do it. When I was at Inman, it was a really great environment, great company. I mean, it's such a great brand. But we all get that feeling of like, there's something like, what's the next thing? Right. And I remember kind of quietly, exploring other options and realizing that, maybe the next step is for me to go out on my own. And, I'm married. I have kids. Like, you have these responsibilities in life. And when you make that leap to go out on your own, it can be a big decision. So I think that was sort of the very first thing was once I made the choice, it was a little nerve wracking. And then I would say probably the next thing was not completely knowing what it is I wanted to do. I knew I was good at what good at what I knew, and I was confident in that, but I didn't have all my ducks in a row. I didn't have a fancy business plan. There was kind of a lot of fake it till you make it, and sort of a say yes, figure it out later.
That's a golden nugget right there, though. That truly is. That fake it till you make it. I mean, people like entrepreneurs, the common trait I see in all of them is they have the Cortez mentality. They burn the ships. They show up and then they burn the ships. They're all in. And then they say yes and figure it out later. What is it? Richard Branson says an opportunity walks by and you don't know how to do it, say yes to it and figure out how to do it. Don't turn it down. Don't go learn how to do it and come back and say yes because you'll lose the opportunity. Just say yes and figure it out. So that's a golden nugget. I love that.
Yeah, that was a huge I think, part of the beginning of our business, and we really continue to evolve. And I think that's really baked into a lot of what we do. And it doesn't mean you're not being authentic, because as you mentioned, authenticity and being true to who you are is really important. But so often we let our fears go, well, I'm not good enough for that. Like you said with the podcast, I'm not really ready to release that yet. And so we become our own worst enemy versus like, okay, it may not be perfect. We're going to put it out there and go from there. And there's a great phrase I always like to say, and I can't take credit for it. It's actually on the wall at Facebook headquarters. It says, done is better than perfect.
Amen.
And I say that all the time. Done is better than perfect.
Nah, it's so true. So walk us through a little bit about, so the audience, if they don't know what you do, what is Katie Lance Consulting, and like, what are you doing for clients? Because I think that's a good way to frame up before we get into the details of the social media. It gives them an idea and picture of what you do.
Yeah, we really just focus on 3 things. So the first is speaking. I speak all over the country at conferences, primarily in real estate, stages big and small. I think that's, like you said, that's where we first met, was at an Inman conference. And I speak at probably a couple dozen events every year. So that's always a lot of fun. The second thing we do is we do consulting, but on the corporate level. So we consult with brokerages and franchises. We'll sit down with a franchise or brokerage's leadership team, and we'll spend a couple days looking through their social media plan and doing things like a social media audit and really kind of peeling back the layers of what they're doing right and where are there opportunities for them to grow and improve. So a lot of our consulting is more kind of on that corporate level. And then the third thing is our Get Social Smart Academy. So our academy is a member site. It's for agents and brokers who are looking to get smarter about social media. And once they sign up, they have access to all of our videos and training. So that's been a great way to kind of scale our business and serve more people, which ultimately is something we were excited about doing.
Awesome. So then walk us through, this Get Social Smart Academy, because I think that will be the most relevant for our audience that's listening.
Yeah.
So, you're helping real estate agents really with social media. Can you walk us through kind of the biggest mistakes you see agents making, and then let's talk about kind of some of the actions they can do to really increase their social awareness or increase their abilities on social media, and really ultimately to generate leads and more business for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest mistake I still see in real estate, but also outside of real estate, I see this in financial services and small business owners, is that a lot of people want to kind of outsource social media, or just sort of check the box and say, okay, I did it. We posted 5 times this week, done, and we move on. And I think it's something you have to be really careful with, because, when it comes to social media, the first part of social is social, right? And there's still a part, especially in real estate, where you've got to show up. It's kind of the equivalent to having a dinner party with your 10 most important clients, and instead of you showing up, you have your assistant show up and run the whole thing, right? So I still see that a lot is agents and brokers kind of, set it and forget it, outsourcing, they're automating everything. And I think that there's definitely a place for agents and brokers and people to have help. For example, we have a video editor on our team, because I know for me, it's important to be on camera and to share my knowledge, but I don't have to be the one learning how to do video. Right. So, and so when it comes to, I think, content and social media, I don't think there's anything wrong with having someone maybe help you in terms of video editing, or help you schedule some of your content, or maybe you've got a graphic designer to help you with graphics, things like that. Probably not in the beginning, but at some point that might be a place to aspire to. But when it comes to sort of the day-to-day and engaging with people, wishing people happy birthday or congratulations, or that one-to-one connection, that's so powerful. And you can't underestimate the power of doing that. It's not just one more thing to check off. It's really one more tool in your tool chest for building those relationships. And that sort of leads me to the second part of that, and that is that it takes time. We want those results right away. And as you said in the beginning, I think one of the things I try to pride myself on is understand that it takes time. It's a numbers game. And for anybody in sales, you've always heard that, right?
Amen.
It's a numbers game.
Amen.
You call 10 people, you talk to 6, you get, whatever it might be, right? And that's the same thing with social media. So when you start to post on a regular basis and you start to put out relevant content that's unique, that's in your voice, when you start to spend a few minutes a day connecting with people, it doesn't happen overnight, but over the course of time, when done right, you'll start to attract the people you want to work with versus chasing leads. And that's a big part of what we teach in our academy is how do you attract the people you want to work with versus just constantly chasing leads. And it's just such a different mindset because when those people are ready to work with you, they're not calling 12 different realtors. No, they want to work with you because they've seen you on Facebook. They've seen your videos. They've been on your email list for the past 6 months. Like now they're watching you on Instagram. Like they know you, right? That's a big difference.
So how does someone do that? You mentioned finding your voice, right? And I know that you talk a lot about storytelling. How does someone start to tell their story or find their voice? They're not posting on social media today, or they're doing what you're saying. They're checking off the boxes, just posting or curating content. How do you identify what your voice is and make sure that that's authentic and also relates to your business?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So what I recommend is agents or brokers, before you even hop on social media, to kind of take a step back. And I recommend that they do a little bit of an exercise. So if you're listening to this and you've got a paper and pen, this is a great exercise. Exactly. Play along with us. So I would ask yourself a few questions. The first thing I would say is, why do you love what you do?
Yeah.
Right? Why do you love what you do? Why are you in real estate? And for most people, real estate, and I'm just using real estate as an example, for most people, real estate is not their first career. A lot of times it's their second, third, fourth. So, and I would encourage people to really kind of think beyond sort of like the surface level answer you give most people, like dig deep, like why are you really doing what you do? Why do you love what you do? The second thing I would ask people to think about is, who do you love to work with? Like, who do you love to work with, right? Like the people that call you and you just can't wait to talk to them. You just click, you hit it off. What is it about those kind of people that you love? And alternatively, the people you don't like to work with, where you avoid their calls, that might be easier to think about. When you start to think about those things, and I'd recommend, to keep it simple, get a notebook, start just making a few notes. When you could start to think about that, that will really influence your content and your voice in a big way. Because when it comes to content, some of the best content you can put out there is content that's evergreen, meaning it's relevant today, but it's also relevant 3, 6, 12 months from now. So it might be content like, when's the best time to buy or sell, or how do I declutter, or how do I find a realtor, things like that. Well, guess what? There's a gazillion videos like that. But once you start to go through this exercise of figuring out why you love what you do and who you want to work with, when you create those pieces of content, you can now layer in your voice, right? Not just content for the sake of content, but sort of layering in your opinion. And that's a big difference between someone who's just like blasting out content for the sake of content and actually just layering in your opinion, right? And I'll say also that when you first start doing this, you probably are not going to be very good at it. I mean, I remember my first videos, years ago. They're probably on YouTube somewhere, and they weren't that great. And it's a skill.
I remember Luke's first videos.
Yeah, let's not talk. Let's not go there.
The more you do it, the better you get. And that's the thing. So often people want to wait till everything's perfect. Guess what? Things are not going to be perfect. It's just like the agent who gets their license and then never takes a listing because they want to make sure that they've got everything ready and I've got my desk set up and I've got all my paperwork in place and like the car is clean and blah, blah, blah. You learn by doing. You have to at some point jump in and just do it. Yeah. Right?
I love that. Frequency before greatness. That's what I learned from Grant Cardone. Frequent before you're great. Now, he was talking about cold calling, but that applies to everything in life. You must be frequent before you're great. You show up.
It also gets the reps in so that you can become great. So
correct.
Yes. It's just like any muscle, right? You're exercising that muscle.
Yeah, you mentioned like putting your opinion in there. So I'm curious to hear your take because I've heard your take, but I'm curious for you to share with our audience. How do you put your opinion in there without potentially offending a potential client or turning someone off because your opinion doesn't match theirs?
If you are turning somebody off or your opinion doesn't match someone else's, you're doing it right.
I love that. Yes. Can we get an applause for that? Yeah. The rest of you, yes, applause in the background. There we go.
That's the secret sauce is, and here's the thing. Nobody wants to offend people. Nobody wants to be polarizing. But what happens then is then we become really vanilla. And really kind of boring. And if you think about your own use of social media, when we share something, when we comment or like something, it's typically because maybe something funny or inspirational, or we agree with their opinion, or maybe we disagree, right? Like it's moved us in some way.
Right.
And so it doesn't mean you have to start offending everybody that you meet, right? I'm not saying
I'm
gonna go try that now.
But what I found are some of the most opinionated people. I may not agree with them. You may not agree with them. But let me tell you, there's a whole audience of people that love them.
Yeah.
And that's their people. And I know that when I'm doing my videos, I'm thinking to myself, you know what? There's people who are watching this going, I don't know about that girl. Whatever. Like, and that's fine. Those aren't my people. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So part of it's just kind of being comfortable in your own skin and knowing like, look, I'm not going to try to be anybody else but who I am. And people either like it, they don't like it. If they don't like it, that's okay. There's enough business for all of us in the world.
I love that. I love that mindset. I got another Grant Cardone quote for us. One day they love me, one day they hate me. Both days I get paid.
I like that.
No, but it's true. I mean, that mindset, 50% of the world might love you, 50% might hate you. And once you get into what you were talking about, which is why you do what you do, and if you notice, it wasn't about necessarily people loving you. It was, it's about, why do you love what you do?
Yeah.
Why do you love helping people? Why do you, whatever it is that makes you, that why maybe you call it or whatever that, makes you tick, that's ultimately what it's about. And if you stay true to that and stay on that course, then you can deal with all the haters. And also the haters are a sign you're making it. A lot of times. Yeah. I mean, once you start, then that means you're getting attention. There's awareness out there that's happening. So then
ultimately, sorry.
Oh, no, please. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say one other small thing because you asked me earlier about mistakes. And this goes back to, I think, that question about what's a big mistake a lot of agents and brokers make. And if I could add one more to that answer, it would be just being vanilla, right? If I go on 10 different agents' Facebook pages in 10 different cities, a lot of times I see the same thing. I see their listings, their open houses, links to articles they've read, but very rarely do I have a sense of who they are or what do they stand for? What are they all about? Right? So even in 2019, I think that's such a huge opportunity, as long as, you can be patient and know that it takes time, right? Just like any other marketing.
Before I forget this thought, who do you think is doing social media well in the real estate business? Do you have any examples that you would share that maybe people could go see? Because that thought popped into my mind. I don't want to lose it, but I can think of a guy, Ed Stulak. I might be butchering his last name, but that guy kills on social media. If you guys look for Ed Stulak. So we did a podcast with him, but I think he's classified the millennial realtor.
The millennial realtor, yeah.
He kills it. I'm learning from him. I'm like,
he does some super interesting home tours.
Teach me. Teach me something, man.
Awesome.
Is there anybody you can think of, Katie, that's doing it well that the audience could go check out?
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of examples, but probably one of my favorites, a good dear friend of mine, you might know her from Instagram or social media. Her name is Sue Pinky Benson. She's known as the Pink Lady of Real Estate.
Oh, that's awesome.
And Sue is awesome. She's a realtor in Naples, Florida. And particularly what I like about her is, she was originally from a different area in Florida, moved out to Naples about 3 years ago. And the way she was really able to establish herself in a brand new market was through video.
Wow.
And if you look at anything that she does a ton on Instagram stories, Instagram Live, Facebook Live. Most of it's just done with her phone. And she's a great example of leaning into who she is and who she's not, right? Some people love her. Some people don't love her. And she's fine with that. And she's attracted a ton of business because of the video content she's put out in Naples. And she's a great example. She's, like I said, she's known as the Pink Lady of Real Estate. So if you Google that, I'm sure you'll find her.
And we'll put these hashtags or whatever or not hashtags, these handles in the show notes. So you guys can go to staypaidpodcast.com and you can search this episode and we'll put them in there so you guys can go see some tangible examples. So I'm curious because, I want to use kind of my brother as an example. So he's a real estate agent in Virginia and he's trying to go all in, as he calls it, on social media, and he wants to build a big following. And so he's doing, Takeover Tuesday. I don't know if you're following him, Josh. You should be.
I am following.
Takeover Tuesday.
I am Stephen Acree.
Nice, awesome. Yeah. So he does it where one member of his team, like today, I think his buyer's agent took it over, and she's like sharing on stories to give you an idea of what he's doing. Like she woke up today and she had a story of her kids getting ready for work or getting ready for school. She's getting her kids ready for school. Then she had a story of stopping by a FSBO, and she's kind of filming her day. So they're doing a Takeover Tuesday. Then they're trying to post all about their listings. They're trying to post testimonials, and they do open house lives and stuff like that. I guess what I am curious of your thoughts are, what are some other ideas? Like he's almost struggling to come up with ideas of what he can post about to change it up. And maybe that's the wrong mindset. So him and I have been kind of discussing that. Like, how do you not do the same thing over and over again and make it boring? And, he's trying these educational tips. He's trying, just following his day. But what are some ideas that you would give an agent like that?
Sure. So one of the things I always recommend is it's a really great practice for an agent to sit down with a pen and paper and to brainstorm all the questions they get asked all the time, right? And there's lots of questions people get asked all the time. Those questions where you think to yourself, oh my gosh, if I get asked that one more time, right? That's a great question. So when you sit down, you could probably brainstorm and think of 10, 20, maybe even 30 things that people ask you. Even things like, should I declutter? Why should I hire a stager? How should I find a realtor? Should I get a lender before I get a stager? Like, should I move to this area versus just all those minute questions. You can even look in your email, look in your sent email as inspiration for questions. And that's generally a great place to start. You could brainstorm kind of a whole list of questions. And then once you've got a list, let's say you come up with a list of, 20 or 30 topics. Now it's a matter of just taking that and plugging that into your schedule. So you might answer 1 or 2 a week. Maybe Tuesday is Tip Tuesday, where you're sharing a quick tip, a quick real estate tip, and you're answering a quick question. Maybe it's, a different day of the week, but, taking that sort of those ideas in terms of, what that content looks like, and then kind of putting it onto a calendar. And then you can repurpose that in a lot of different ways. For him, he might think about creating, maybe longer form video that's 2 or 3 minutes, which, that's long form video these days, right? 2 or 3 minutes. And taking that video, getting that up into his Facebook business page and on YouTube, and then repurposing that and creating a short story about it on Instagram stories and saying, hey, if you want to watch the full video, click the link in my bio, right? And so this idea of taking content, and I'm a huge believer in this, of, one piece of content and slicing and dicing and repurposing it, 12 different ways, is huge. The other thing I'd recommend too, as far as content, is featuring other people. It's one of the fastest ways to grow your account, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and the agents and brokers that we see doing this on a regular basis are growing their accounts leaps and bounds. So for example, let's say every Friday you decide to do Feature Friday. Well, you could do an Instagram story. This works on Facebook too, where you're saying, hey, I want to give a shout out to XYZ Bakery. These guys are amazing. They've got the best coffee in town.
Great idea.
Check them out. It doesn't have to be real estate related. It could be community. It could be whatever. And again, you could brainstorm that list. Who are the dozen or so companies or people that you love in your community? Write them all down. Search to see if they're on Instagram. Make sure you follow them. If you do an Instagram story, tag that location, tag them, and now you're bringing them into the conversation. And
that's a fantastic idea.
Just to hit on one of the points that she made, because we just recently went through the same experience, and it's such a good point that people miss, is taking content that's longer form and then cutting that down into smaller pieces. So what does that look like? That looks like video, that looks like quote graphics, that looks like images with a caption that talks about what you do. We were sitting down and brainstorming some stuff for Luke's social media and ReminderMedia, and Luke just did a webinar on for our clients in April, right? And I said, I bet if we watch that webinar, we'll come up with 20 pieces of content that we can post. We made it 8 minutes into an hour webinar and came up with 20 pieces of content to post. So go back.
I'm blushing right now, guys.
That wasn't a compliment at you. That was a compliment at how great Andrea and I are brainstorming and coming up with content. But that's the idea, is taking that and thinking of all the different ways. And like Luke said, if you're following people that are doing it well in the examples that you gave, it gives you ideas for, here are the different types of pieces of content that I can make. Maybe I can't do video right now, or I can't edit video because I don't have a video designer. There's lots of great apps that you can get on your phone for free that can help you edit video. So I don't even think that's much of an excuse anymore. But editing that down so that you can begin repurposing it, it's so much less work for so much more content.
I also
it is.
I want to point out the idea you mentioned about partnering. So my brother, who we're using in the example, just changed his cell phone company to Sprint, and he got 2 referrals. out of doing when he was changing his cell phone, he's asking all the reps, hey, I'm a real estate agent. He got 2 referrals, but he posted about them. Now, we're not thinking about it strategically like Katie is talking about here, which I think is amazing. But I just want to give that testimony of he features Sprint. If you go to his profile right now, I believe he has a picture of him in the Sprint store with 2 of the reps introducing them. So we weren't even thinking of it that way, but I love that. And think of how many local businesses you have in your community, and the ability to get referrals, and they want that he did a business line with them, so he switched from a personal line to a business line, and you can feed them business, they can feed you business. I love that. That's awesome. So great tips.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think a lot of people have heard that tip before, but what happens a lot of times is people think, well, that sounds like a lot of work. I got to contact the business, and then I got to go do a video shoot and all this, X, Y, and Z. And you could go down that route. You could make this professional, community video series, whatever, but you could also just start with where you're at, right? You could just start by holding a cup of coffee and saying, this coffee's awesome, and I got it at XYZ Bakery. They're awesome. Check it out. It doesn't have to be, this Hollywood video production.
Yeah.
You could start with where you're at,
Yeah, that's such a great tip.
So.
What platforms do you encourage agents to be on the most of the social media platforms?
It's a tricky question because I think for a lot of people, Facebook is still the number one social media platform, but Facebook is changing and evolving so much, and there's so much noise on Facebook with, political posts and, everything else in between.
Yep.
I think Instagram is a close second, and for a lot of agents, Instagram has become the first. So those are the 2 places I'm hanging out the most on for sure. I think, Instagram is a little bit quieter still. Even though it's owned by Facebook. It's also a more aspirational platform, which I think is perfect for real estate. I think both of them. I think if you're just putting all your eggs in Facebook and you are writing off Instagram, I would encourage you to at least explore Instagram a little bit. Instagram, in my opinion, is kind of where Facebook was 10 years ago, in terms of just, a lot of different things. People are like, oh, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I'm always like, just download it. Just play around with it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You push the wrong button and then you can delete it.
I'm constantly finding new features on Instagram. I show Andrea, our social media manager. I'm like, hey, look at this feature. Do you know about this? She's like, yeah, we've been using
what
that for
are you,
months.
old or no?
I do feel old sometimes.
There's so much that you can do. Yeah, both of those are growing. They're both really valuable. Facebook just came out with a big announcement. They've made a number of big announcements recently, specifically around Facebook. They are, I don't know if you've seen this, but they are starting to populate groups a lot more than ever before. They're going to be making a lot of tweaks to Facebook groups. So I do think that that's a big area of opportunity for agents and brokers.
It's a huge opportunity. Yeah.
In terms of maybe creating a community group, or if they're a broker, a group just for their agents. But I think groups are going to continue to grow in a big way. Mark Zuckerberg has said that the future of social media is private, which I think is really interesting. And I look at that as a couple different ways. I think groups are obviously a lot more private than, say, some of the public Facebook pages, things like that. But I also think there's a lot of opportunity in that one-to-one, using Facebook Messenger, using Instagram Messenger, having calls to action like, hey, you have any questions? Message me. What do you think of this? Message me. And when you start getting that one-to-one, there's so much magic in that. That's where the relationships happen, is that one-to-one, that back and forth.
Yeah, and an applicable or a practical application of that would be if you're a realtor or any service-based business professional in a community and you want to be the go-to resource for people in that community, you can put together a group and become that resource in a very public way, or like you said, a closed group, private way, as well as encouraging people to ask you questions through DM. I see a lot of people with their when they do Instagram stories, obviously ask me anything kind of questions. You can put a little question box on your story for people to ask you. So if you have followers on Instagram, you can have them ask you anything. Do you need me to recommend? What recommendations are you looking for this spring? Right? People are spring cleaning. We're cleaning up our yards. We're cleaning out. Me and my wife just cleaned out our garage. That was an all-day affair. I could use some recommendations.
The pickers, right?
Yeah.
On the History Channel.
Yeah, get the pickers in here. But that's a great opportunity to start becoming that local expert and that resource for people that will keep you top of mind.
Yes. And one tip I would give you, especially for anyone listening who's starting to explore Instagram stories, a great place to kind of start with Instagram stories, if you're starting to put out content, maybe you're answering questions or you're kind of sharing behind the scenes, I really recommend people start using the poll feature. So within Instagram stories, there's a little button that says poll, and you can create your own poll. And it could be as simple as, I don't know, you watching the big game tonight? Yes or no? Have you ever been at this coffee shop? Yes or no? And it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but the idea behind a poll is it gets people tapping, right? It gets people engaged. And with the Instagram algorithm, the more you can get people engaged, the more likely they're going to see the rest of your content. So we use polls quite often, and it's a great way just to kind of keep people engaged, keep people, in the conversation. And on the back end of Instagram, I can see, oh, look, these 20 people answered my poll. Well, now I'm going to go check out their content. I'm going to interact with them, and it's a great way to build engagement.
That's awesome.
No, I love that. It's a great tip. What's your best tip of like growing a following? Like when you start on Instagram, I know for me, what's really hard, and what for most people, it's like you don't have anybody following you. So how do you go out there and get them? And so there's the follow for follow strategy and stuff. But what is the best way you have found to kind of organically grow a following?
Yeah, that's a good question. We really spent a lot of time over the last probably 6 to 12 months really focused on growing our Instagram. And part of that was I wanted to get over that 10,000 follower mark, because as a lot of you might know, when you get over 10,000, you get the coveted swipe up feature with your Instagram stories, which is awesome. You only, you can, if you don't have 10,000 followers, you can still use that with Instagram TV, and you can still use that if you do paid advertising, which we can talk about if you'd like. But as far as growing your Instagram, I think there's a couple things that are really important. Obviously, quality of content is really key, and posting consistently. I know there's lots of schools of thought. We really upped how often we're posting. I post in our Instagram newsfeed at least once a day, sometimes twice a day.
Okay.
That frequency has made a really big difference. And then using hashtags in posts, using, 20 to 30 hashtags per post, doing a little bit of hashtag research to see which hashtags might be the most relevant for your audience.
How do you do the research? Sorry. How do you do hashtag research?
There's different apps. If you go in the app store and you can search, hashtag, there's lots of different apps that will help you, but sort of organically what I've done is you can just go on Instagram and start searching things that are relevant to you. So for example, if I was an agent, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. If I was an agent in San Francisco, I would go on Instagram, I'd search San Francisco real estate or San Francisco homes for sale. And I would start to kind of search to see what types of hashtags are being used. And you'll see certain hashtags have millions of users. Some only have a couple dozen. I like to try to pick hashtags that have at least a few 100,000. Okay. I find that's sort of the sweet spot, where you'll actually get noticed if you're using something like that. So hashtags make a big difference. Frequency with Instagram stories makes a big difference. And then to really grow your account, though, you mentioned follow for follow. I'm not a really big fan of follow for follow, but I think what's really effective is actually going out and seeing who's posting content using the hashtags you want to be found in. So if I was an agent in San Francisco, and let's say I wanted to be sort of found for hashtag SF Realtor or hashtag SF Homes, I would start searching that hashtag and then engaging with other people who are using that hashtag.
Love it.
Right? So I do that on a daily basis. I'm engaging with probably 20 or 30 people every single day who are not followers of me yet, but who are using hashtags that I want to be known in. And I'm not just clicking like on 20 or 30 things. I'm really trying to be thoughtful and, leave a thoughtful comment. And what will happen is they will go, oh, who's that? Then they click over to my profile. So it's important you have a nice profile, that you've got, your bio updated. It's been a great way to kind of organically build our following over the course of time. But just like anything, it takes time,
No, I think that's great tips. Do you use like Instagram TV right now? Have you found that to be really successful? I know that just recently has become kind of the go-to thing is what I'm hearing. Have you found that to be successful or seen any difference using that?
Yeah. Instagram TV, as you probably know, launched about a year or two ago, and it was okay. I mean, we would put videos up there. We didn't get a whole lot of traction. And then Instagram made this change pretty recently to how Instagram TV works. And for those of you listening who may not know, Instagram TV is a separate app, a standalone app where you can upload video content that's up to 10 minutes in length. And so the latest thing that happens now with Instagram TV is you can upload that video onto Instagram TV. And now there's a little button that says, would you like to share a 1-minute preview over on your own Instagram feed? Mm-hmm. And once they made that change, it was, I know it's a cliche, but it really was a game changer. Mm-hmm. So we post content on Instagram TV probably at least once a week. We share that 1-minute preview. It shows up in the news feed. It's more likely to show up in the Explore tab. And what we've seen is instead of just getting a couple hundred views on our videos, we're getting thousands of views on our IGTV videos. And right now, at least right now, as of the recording of this podcast, it's one of the best ways to get traction on Instagram is through IGTV. Apparently, Instagram is really pushing for it, so your content is more likely to get seen.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, this is another tip, is pay attention to what these social media platforms are doing. When they release a new feature, try and use that feature as much as possible. So Katie said that they released that about a year ago. We got into it a little bit about a year ago. We actually saw it starting to fall off. We didn't put a ton of time into it. Same thing you're saying, weren't really seeing the results. And then the minute that they do that, be on those changes, because the platforms are going to push their new features because they want them to be successful. It was the same thing that happened with Facebook Live, is Facebook favors live videos. If you guys don't know, your followers on Facebook, if you have a business page, you're only going to reach about 2 to 5%, if you're lucky, of those followers on Facebook. Yep. Facebook wants people to see more of people's content, so what your friends are sharing versus the pages that you're following. But once you start doing live videos, all of a sudden your organic reach from those live videos increases because Facebook wants to keep you on their platform. They want you to use their new features. And the same thing applies there with this IGTV. So make sure that you're following staying up to date on those. Is there any blogs or any news sites that you recommend people follow just to stay up to date on that stuff?
I mean, I've been following Social Media Examiner for years and years. I think they're a great source for just social media news and updates. They have a great conference that they put on once a year. And, full disclosure, I've been a contributor to them as well in the past, but they're a great source for just what's the latest and greatest and what's happening. I also really liked BuzzSumo. BuzzSumo is a great source as well. They're a great content curation platform. So if you're looking for like the best content for certain subjects, they're a great platform. But they're also a great news platform. It's really great to find out like what's the latest, what's going on with social media. And so I use that platform a lot to kind of get the scoop on what's the latest thing Mark Zuckerberg's talking about. Or
you can also follow katielance.com/blog.
Yes.
That is true. Good plug, guys.
No, I love that. So what's your, if I could pick your brain all day, I'm so curious about this social media stuff, mainly because, I feel the wins and the pains of social media. Like we're trying to grow our following. We have been engaging. I love now engaging with clients. I'm talking to my own clients on social media. It's awesome. And we've been at it for, years now, trying to, really master this game. What's your philosophy on paid ads? Like, at a high level, if you were giving your advice to people for paid ads from Facebook and Instagram and stuff, what would you say?
Well, I think paid ads, especially for real estate, are changing, just in the financial industry in general. Depending on when you listen to this podcast, things may have changed again. There's been all these things that have come out about fair housing and what types of ads you can place. And, there's just a lot of news coming down from the National Association of Realtors and housing and urban development and all that good stuff. And apparently, according to Facebook, by the fall, they're saying around September or so that they are going to be launching a ad platform for Facebook and Instagram just for real estate and just for the kind of real estate financial services. So I think it's definitely a kind of a moving target right now. And if you've tried to run any ads recently, your ads might have gotten flagged for fair housing. So I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I do think advertising can be effective. I think we've been spoiled by Facebook because in the past we used to be able to really target every little nuance, and that's kind of going away. I do think that there's opportunities for advertising. A couple things. Right now, I think it's a great opportunity to advertise on Instagram, especially Instagram stories. That's kind of a prime piece of real estate, no pun intended, but it's a really prime piece of real estate right now that not a lot of people are taking advantage of.
Right.
So we're seeing agents and brokers who are using Instagram stories ads to either promote their listings or, provide valuable content. Maybe they're saying, hey, are you thinking about being a first time home buyer? Swipe up to get my first time home buyer, checklist or whatever it might be. So those type of ads, I think, are performing really well. Video ads are still performing really well. If you're running any kind of video content on Facebook, those tend to be running really, really well. Ideally, where I think things are kind of moving towards and where we see the biggest benefit for advertising are ads where you are targeting a really warm audience, right? Ads where you're targeting people who already kind of know, like, and trust you. So either they've come to your website and you're retargeting them through the Facebook pixel, which is really effective, or you've got a custom email database and you're uploading that into Facebook, a list of people who've opted into your email marketing, you're uploading that, and then you're running ads to that list. We've seen, just from our own experience and the clients we've worked with, when you can do ads that are targeting that warm audience, they're more likely to click on the ad. They're more likely to engage in the ad. They're more likely to tag their friends in an ad. So I think there's opportunities. I just don't think it's the end all and be all. I think a lot of people put money in ads because they're not quite sure what else to do and they want to make sure that they're getting some bang for their buck. I still think there's a lot of things that you can do organically, especially when it comes to content and putting out original content.
Yeah, we've always seen it, like, kind of the ads definitely get the reach, they get the eyeballs, they find the audience potentially for you because you can really be really specific with who you want to reach in terms of people that like other pages that you might want to target. And then that ultimately gets them into your content machine. And I think Instagram is such a great tool for really showing off the personality so much more than Facebook because you're so much more likely to get seen. Your stories and your content are so much more likely to get seen on Instagram, whereas Facebook's so hard to get seen organically.
I would even
and I think there's lots of different layers to ads. So often an agent's trying to do an ad to sell something or to sell themselves, and they're doing it to this cold audience who doesn't even know who they are.
No, you have to build the funnel. Yeah, like you said, you have to build the funnel. You have to get known first, then you have to get liked, then you have to get trusted, and then that becomes your potential. Yeah.
Now, I really love your philosophy on running ads because I think it touches on the fundamental principles of running a real estate business or financial business. If you run ads really chasing leads, to steal your term that you mentioned earlier, you're going to end up being disappointed. And that's why I think a lot of real estate agents get into the ad game and get into really every marketing they do. They think, I'm going to do an ad and it's going to generate me leads and then I'm going to get a closing. And if you think about it from a mindset, you use the term the warm audience. And what I like to say is like, what you're trying to do is build a relationship, get known, get mind share with the people. And so they go through this funnel of know, like, and trust. Like my brother, to mention him in this example we've been using through the podcast, his ads, the biggest effect his ads have for him are not the buyers and seller leads it generates, though he gets leads off of his ads. It's the friends that decide to use him that say, man, I see you everywhere. You must be killing it. It's like the branding, which I know we hate branding because it's not a direct instant gratification, but it's like this cumulative effect that we talk about in marketing that you want to be omnipresent. You want people just to see you everywhere. And in a great way to do it is through content that's not selling something as much as it is providing value. And then every once in a while you're posting, they see your listings. You post and guess what? They see your testimonial of a client that has used you. And it's all in this just funnel of trying to build this mind share. So then they get warmer and warmer and warmer, and then when the time comes, they think of you. So I want to ask you, one of the questions we ask everybody we interview on the podcast, and every one of us, I think it's just how we are as human beings. We really want to know the 7-step process to success, and we're always searching for, what is it that successful people have done. Yeah, what are the 3 things I need to do? It's just clickbait. But I'm just curious, I don't believe there's a magic formula to success, and I believe most of the audience doesn't think there is either. But there are principles. There are routines that successful people do that maybe it's not for everybody, but maybe there's a routine you've done in your life or things you've practiced day in and day out that you can look back now and go, that routine has really generated a lot of success. And I'm curious if you have any that you could share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think habits and routines are so key. A lot of people will say, I don't have time for social media. And I will usually challenge that and say, I bet you just haven't made it a routine yet, right? You probably just haven't made it into a system. And when I think about, your question about systems and routines. I think for me, it's really been staying committed to my daily routine as far as my work hours, as far as what I say yes to, what I say no to. For me, one of the reasons why we started our own company was to have quality of life, to have time with my 2 kids, to be there in the morning before they go to school and to see them after school and, all that good stuff. Right. And so to me, I think time is our most precious asset. And so really guarding that time. And, for us, I've kind of, set some parameters about when we're on, as far as, our work hours, when we, take our first call, when we kind of end the day. And I mean, to be honest with you, we start our day, we probably take our first call around 9 or 10, and then we try to end it by like 3 or 4, because we want to be in this for the long haul, and of course, as an entrepreneur, we might be on our laptop late at night, or on a Saturday, whatever it might be is needed. But just having those parameters of your own time, and not being able to not being afraid to kind of push back a little bit, or if someone's asking for a specific time, just kind of, I don't know if push back is the right word, but just having those right expectations when you're working with clients and working with people. And I think people respect you even more.
I would agree.
I have a client of mine who takes or someone who's in our academy, I should say, and he takes every Sunday off, like completely just takes the whole day off. And in real estate, that's, oh my gosh, like unheard of. But for him, just spiritually and for his family, and he always says it's like the best thing that he's been able to do for his business. And he's able to do it because he has set those right expectations, and
I
now
love
it's become
that.
a habit.
I love that. Valuing that self-value of your time, I think even gives a persona of confidence that, hey, I'm not available 24/7. I love that. Yep. All right. So just
setting limits, I would say too, how many, because so often we schedule our day, boom, 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 and we don't allow ourselves some unstructured time.
Right.
To do whatever needs to get done, right? So I think that's important too.
What was it? Was it Lee Brown? Am I pronouncing? I'm getting her name maybe wrong. She says, "I don't work with assholes." A bit popular real estate agent, and like one of her themes is, "I don't work with assholes." Now that's being authentic. I don't work with
yes, and she's a great example. Some people. I mean, a lot of people love her, and there's, I'm sure, some people who, maybe don't, and that's okay. She could care less, That's all good.
I agree. So last question for you here, is knowing what you know now, what would you go back and tell younger Katie? What advice would you give?
Well, I think to bring it back to business, since this is such a great conversation about social media and business, I would probably go back to like the first year that I started our company. And the first year we were in business, this is a bit embarrassing, but I didn't even have a website. I had a Facebook page, and it's fine. It was one of those things where, again, like done is better than perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
But what I realized is the value of not just having a website, but having a website that helps to build your email database. And I wish I would have started that earlier than we did. And that's now a big focus of our business because, to be honest with you, who knows how long Facebook will be around for? They could be here today, gone tomorrow.
Right.
I don't think that'll necessarily happen, but who knows? And so often people put all of their eggs into social media, and I'm in the business of social media.
Yep.
But I still think it's so valuable for you to own your list. And I mean, this could be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, it really could.
But I just think it's so valuable. So often I'll speak at an event and say, how many of you are sending out, email newsletters? And like, a dozen people out of 100 will raise their hand. And I just would say for anyone listening to this, there's a lot of value in starting to build an email database, not just for sending out property alerts if you're in real estate, but building an email database where, maybe once a month or a couple times a month, you're sending them valuable information. You're keeping in touch with them. Believe it or not, in 2019, email is not dead. And, when done right, it can really make a huge, huge difference in your business. That's, to be honest, kind of one of the extra little secret sauces that we've learned into growing our platforms because we're not platform dependent.
Yes.
So that would just be my one little tip if I could go back in time.
That's a great lesson. If you're listening out
awesome.
there and you don't have your email database, then don't do what Katie did and say you regret it later. Do it now.
And your money,
Start it.
Your business's value is in the client base.
Yeah.
It's in your database. And you hear that.
Take that wherever you go.
Yep, correct. You hear that in real estate specifically, but it's every business. Your value is your database of customers and prospects and people who know, like, and trust you. That is your value as a business. I love that. Great tip.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Katie. Really appreciated you having you on the podcast. Before we go, let people know how they can connect with you, how they can get your book, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Probably the best place for anybody to connect with me is on my website. It's just katielance.com, Katie, Lance, Lance, katielance.com. We have hundreds of free resources. You can sign up for our email newsletter there if you'd like and connect with us on social media. And since you're listening to this, you are probably a podcast listener, I would guess. And so we also have a podcast we launched recently. I'm just the Katie Lance podcast on all the podcast platforms. So that's a great way to connect if you enjoy podcast content. But I'm happy to connect with anyone listening. If you have any questions or want to pick my brain, or if there's something I said you didn't quite understand, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. We'll definitely link to all of that.
Every platform.
We'll link to all of that in the show notes for this episode, which you can get by going to staypaidpodcast.com. Or if you're listening to this on a mobile device, you can usually either tap or swipe over the cover art. I think if you're on the iPhone, just swipe up, and that'll give you all of the information, including the show notes for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you did like what you heard today, if you like what you hear today or heard, and you heard it and you liked it, go into iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us spread the word. Also, you can find this podcast in video on youtube.com/ReminderMedia. And you can contact us on Instagram at staypaidpodcast.com. For this episode of Stay Paid, I'm Joshua Stike.
Guys, and I'm Luke Acree, and I have your action item here. And you must do this when you get home tonight.
Do it.
Well, actually, I'm not even going to say when you get home tonight. Do it right after listening to this.
Pull over. If you're driving, pull over to the side of the road. Put your blinkers on.
Katie gave you an unbelievable social media tip. And I'm literally going to text my brother after this and say, dude, I know how to get your next 20 posts. But I'll give you credit. Write down the 20 most asked questions to you. It's a brilliant idea. Brilliant idea. Write down what are the 20 most asked questions that you get in your business.
That you take for granted.
That you take for granted. And it might not just be educational stuff on your business. It might be your story. Like, people might ask you, why do you do real estate? That might be one of the most asked questions you get. So don't think about it just in terms of education. I thought that was a brilliant idea. Write those 20 down, film a video answering each of them, write little something answering each of them, and you got so much content there. The reason we do Stay Paid is we want people to take action on some of the tips that they hear. I know you're not going to take action on all of them, but just some of the tips, put them into action. This is the tip you should put into action today to get you some content that you can start posting, because like we talked about on this podcast, it's about consistency. Consistency wins the game all the time. And remember, the difference between a top producer and a mediocre producer. In every single business we worked in over 140 different industries. This has been consistent in every business. The difference between a top producer and a mediocre producer is top producers take action. Remember, done is better than perfect. So take action on that today.